we've talked about several different things to up level your resume, how to connect with people on LinkedIn to really stand out above the crowd. Great tips and advice that Alisa gives us every week on Profesh Sesh. However, what happens when you've done it all? You've tried all the tricks. You've pulled out all the things in your bag and you're still not getting a response. We've heard of people that have sent over 400 resumes to get one interview to potentially not even get the job. So there's so many great resources out there and there are so many great tips that we share every week. But Alisa, what do we do if we're in that position and we're feeling a little disheartened and disenchanted?
Yeah, it's an overwhelming and exhausting feeling for sure. And the burnout for searching for a job, it's real, especially if, you're in a situation where you aren't with a job and you don't have that income to fall back on and you need to find something. And I read a study that in 2020, the average time it took somebody to find a job was about 5 months. So, I mean, that can be very deflating to your whole self, essentially. So, I think that the first thing is if you have just exhausted your efforts and you are feeling just the burnout of this job search, take a beat, as we say here a lot. Take a step back and give yourself time to reset, because that overwhelming sense of it starts to affect your self-worth. It starts to affect you feeling like, you're doubting yourself, you're doubting your experience, and really just take a moment to just step back and hit that reset button and give yourself that distance between that last job application that you've completed that you just feel has gone into a black hole, and going, and starting the search again.
At what time should you potentially consider a coach, a consultant, or even a headhunter? Is this the time while you're taking that beat, or should you give yourself a beat, enter the job market once again, a month or two down the line, and then potentially consider that if you haven't found something at that point?
I think with taking the beat and the reset, you have to give yourself some distance from it all. Give yourself clear head. And that might be just, a couple of days or a week. If you're finding, the last couple of months, every single day you have been nonstop job searching, give yourself the time to kind of mentally check out from all of it so you can come back with a fresh perspective. And people may not have that the luxury of time to be able to do this. So that might just be a day. That might be the day that you say, today, not doing anything about my job search. I'm going to go take a walk. I'm going to go for a hike. I'm going to take a dog for the walk. I'm going to, spend my day with my kids outside somewhere. But give yourself the time to really just separate yourself from that thought process at all. I would say that once you are ready to come back and you feel like, okay, I'm ready to take this on again, I'm ready to tackle this. I think that you need to come up with a plan. Maybe every day, let's say Monday, you're starting it all over again. Give yourself a couple of hours each day. So try not to make it all day, every day, but maybe you give yourself this block of time where you lock yourself in your room, your office, your car, wherever, and give yourself that time to really focus on the research, the job applications, redoing your resume, maybe writing a cover letter. You all know how I feel about my cover letters, but if that is something you want to try, write a cover letter. And then I think that when you're ready to come back into this, you want to really re-examine and reassess the strategy that you're going out into the job marketplace with. That's everything from what's your strategy with the companies you're trying to target? Is your resume aligning with each of those companies that you are targeting? And if not, and you're not necessarily sure, you feel like you have a good resume, you're unsure about that, that's where you may want to say, okay, well, in this next step in my strategy, I should probably consider either taking a professional resume writing course, which I'm sure LinkedIn offers, hiring a professional resume writer. And I want to be very clear, because I'm going to mention headhunter, that a headhunter doesn't write your resume. The headhunter is going to take your skill set and look within the agencies and their database of jobs that you might be qualified for and help submit you for those positions. But they are not resume writers. So you will need to look at potentially hiring a professional resume writer. Places like the Muse, everywhere you do a simple Google search, you're going to find some really great tips on writing resumes. We've got a Profesh Sesh all about this. So tune into that. We give some really great tips on that. And then I think also, if you're still curious, like, how do I target this specific company? I can't emphasize enough that you look at that company's job description, and what they're telling you they need is where they're lacking. And you need to show and tell that story on your resume that you have the capacity to solve for what that company needs. Summary statement, again, if you're just, your resume is reflecting that objective statement, you need to change it to your summary. Maybe you need to look at your personal brand on social media. A lot of people will do a deep dive into you as a potential candidate based on your social media. So if your Instagram is public and it is, not necessarily, you might want to re-examine if that's something that you would want a potential employer to be looking at. So those are all things that, as you're coming up with your reassessing your strategy, questions that you might want to ask yourself. What's your personal brand looking like that's out there? What is your resume really targeting this specific company? Is it really telling the story of what you have the capacity to solve for that they might be missing? Are you targeting companies in the right way? Is your strategy, how can you reassess your strategy to make it work for specific companies, to get your foot in the door and have that conversation? Have you exhausted your network, both of just your personal network? Hey, I'm looking for a job. These are the types of jobs I'm looking for. If you hear of anything, please let me know. Have you reached out to people that you're connected with on LinkedIn for, let's say, just an informational interview, potentially somebody that can help flag your resume internally? When, turn on those job alerts, whether you're using LinkedIn or Rocket Reach or Indeed or wherever it might be, set those job alerts so that you can be one of those first people to apply. Because as a recruiter, those first 2 weeks are crucial, because that's those resumes that are really going to get in front of a recruiter's eye. I'm not saying that if you apply a month into the job being open that you're not going to have your resume viewed, because if a job is still open in a month, there might be a reason why. And as a recruiter, I might need to do a new search, and new applications coming in within the month will get visibility. But it really is important to get your resume in there pretty quickly and get your resume in front of who you need to see as quickly as possible. In going back to taking a step back, but before I actually get into that, do either of you have any questions about that, or need any clarifiers?
No, I think it all makes sense. I have an observation and then a question, but I want to let you continue
Okay.
and then we'll go to that.
All right. I would say, going back to taking the step back, in that time, whether you're giving yourself a day, a week, a month, a year, to see how you can use your time and your skills in other areas to keep it fresh. So you may want to evaluate some volunteer opportunities. Not ideal, but you're networking with people, you're connecting with people, and you're continuing to use your skills, potentially build upon your skills in a way that might not be as conventional. And it's volunteering is rewarding. It's satisfying. It helps with that sense of self and that ability to give back. One of the things that I did when I had some downtime is there's an organization out here in LA that I hold near and dear to my heart, and it's an organization that is kind of it's a home that offers shelter for women of abused situations, domestic violence, and it's a place where they can come and get back on their feet with their children. And they've invited me to come in and help do resume guidance and how to dress for an interview and those kind of things. And I can't tell you how just rewarding it is to be able to help somebody who's trying to get on their feet and get back out there, especially coming from such a hard place. So I think that being able to volunteer your time is essential in this process of taking a step back. Not only volunteering, but taking a class, taking a course through lynda.com, Coursera, LinkedIn, wherever it might be. I love General Assembly out here in LA, and I know that they're expanding, but they offer all sorts of classes, everything from coding and project management, product management, resume writing classes. So stay engaged with different courses and things like that. And then one other thing that I'll say is connect with other job searchers, other people who are in the situation that you are, so that you have that community. You can, just languish in the woes of trying to find a job together. And you also never know who they might know or who you might know and who you can put together. So yeah, I think that there's a lot of things. And then if all else fails and you're like, yeah, tried all that too, and you want to consider a headhunter, just know that there is a fee associated with a headhunter. I think certainly at an executive level, it's worth doing. But just know that a headhunter, you want to make sure that they are reputable, that they do have a Rolodex of agencies and companies within the wheelhouse of your specific industry, and that it's not, they're not just submitting you to jobs willy-nilly. And consider the fact that the fee will probably be somewhere between 15 and 25%. So just food for thought.
Those are such great tips, Alisa. And they tie in very much to what my observation was going to be, which is, I think when you're in this position of waiting and uncertainty, it does take a toll on your self-esteem, and it's easy to be very, very restless. And I think having, it's one thing to say, take a beat, take a day off, take a week off, but I know my personality. That thing will be bugging me, and I won't be able to stop thinking about it until I have the problem solved, until I have the issues. Maybe it's just me, but it's hard to put something that major on the sidelines. And yet it's so important for your mental health to be able to do that. So I think that the tips that you just gave I actually was jotting some down even before then, even doing things that maybe aren't specifically applying for a job, but maybe you're writing a blog post, or maybe you're writing an article on LinkedIn, or maybe you're going through your list of connections, as you were saying, and really sort of organizing them and saying, okay, I'm going to do a virtual coffee with these 10 people. And I'm going to ask them who they know, or just like doing productive things that aren't applying for a job that you may get rejected for when you're feeling so down on the whole process. I think is a productive and a positive way of still moving you towards your target without sitting there and filling out another damn online job application and redoing your resume. So there are things that you can do that are helpful, that aren't applying, that will maybe be a way to navigate that time when you're betwixt and between, and you're not able to just take your mind off of it and go for a hike. I mean, I'm not that kind of person. I wish I was, but so I have a couple of questions then. One is, are there headhunters for every level of person, or is that, I've always thought of that as just being more of an executive level. And then the second thing I wanted you to maybe address is there a time when it's appropriate even to look at a temp agency? Because I know sometimes temp agencies can lead to new connections, new networks, and possibly full-time work. So if you would address those two, that would be great.
Yeah, absolutely. And two great questions. There are headhunters at, I would say, probably almost every level. And it's just tapping into that market because of the high fees that are associated with it. That, I mean, if you're only making $30,000 a year, $25,000 a year coming right out of college, paying a fee like that might not be something that's affordable to you. I think that a temp agency is a great option as well, is signing up with different temp agencies. And there are some really great ones out there, and looking specifically to see what kind of jobs they fill, what kind of organizations that they work with. um, we've hired a lot of temps through different agencies out here in LA, specifically for like the administrative level, the coordinator level. So I think maybe if you are more at that junior level, you might want to look more towards the temp agency, but find the temp agencies that connect with the types of companies that you would want to target. That's an excellent point. I think headhunters, at that professional and executive level, could really be a great avenue to explore, just in terms of the fees associated with it. I wanted to also follow up with something that you had observed in talking about things that keep you productive while you're taking that beat. um, this is also a time to tap in if you have the energy. If there's been something, you hit the nail on the head. If you've been wanting to start that blog, if you have been wanting to start that podcast, or you've wanted to continue taking, exploring photography as a full-time career, using this time to also set aside some time for those passion projects. Because I can't tell you, when I would get into my rut of freelance work when I was younger, of having that time off, just stressing almost every day as to when is my next gig coming up. The amount of time that I spent stressing out about that, when I could have been doing and putting that energy in my day towards something that I was passionate about, that I would have liked to have seen, become something potentially I'd like to have monetized on, I would probably be a billionaire. No, that's an exaggeration, but that's time wasted on energy that you can't get back. And I'd get into the gig and I'd be like, man, why didn't I do that during that time off? So I understand, and I hear what you're saying. It's a heavy thing, that when you're looking for a job and you're stressed about money and finding something, and sometimes it is hard to turn off that worry. But mindful things, even just sitting and in silence for 30 seconds and just taking some deep breaths, can be really helpful to kind of help you come back to that focal point.
I think you both have really hit the nail on the head with this particular, the passion projects, doing things to, just take that beat. When we say beat, it means take a pause from the actual hustle, because it is a hustle to look for a job. I know it and I hate it. But to explore other things, whether that be a passion project, whether that be volunteering, whether that be a cooking class, which again, I also know that some of those things cost money that you may not have, but finding areas where you're connecting with other people and you're getting out of your comfort zone. Because at the end of the day, I was just on a virtual conference, and there was like a university professors talking about educating their film students. The one thing that kept coming up was relationships. And when you know people, when you have a relationship with people, when you get yourself in other groups of people and you connect, you never know what other opportunities you're going to hear about in the most unassuming places. The most unassuming places. So you might be doing it just to kind of get your head out of the search game or whatever, what have you, but you just don't know what'll come from that, apart from just being rejuvenated a little bit and getting yourself out of that rut and that funk. So thank you for both bringing that up. And then another thing that really stood out to me, Alisa, when you were speaking earlier, was something I've never taken advantage of, which I in hindsight, why didn't I? But the job alerts, I've never utilized that function in LinkedIn or Indeed ever. But that is a great thing to call out, because I think that it's overlooked a lot of times, because it's almost like I would get the pop up and I'm like, oh, it's a distraction. Get out of my way. Right. Versus like paying attention to the pop up, because we have so many things popping up on our phone and like in our glance. So pay attention to that and actually put those job alerts in so that it sends you the email. So I love both of those things. And I just wanted to say thank you. And you always have such great advice. And it's not just the advice you're giving, you're coming from a place of like such wholeheartedness. And I really appreciate that of you. So thank you.
Indeed. Yes, you have. I wish, and my hope is that all recruiters are like you. I have a
I
feeling that's
know.
not the case, but we do really appreciate the fact that you really have such empathy for people who are on the other side of the desk from you. So, and yeah, building your network and expanding your network, to Vanessa's point. Like if you do, I always feel like if you do good, like you said, Alisa, if you do volunteer, you take your stock of your skills and you have time to even just do a few hours of volunteering or a one-time kind of giving of yourself, I feel like those things always come back to you. And to Vanessa's point, it does build you a new network that you wouldn't have had otherwise. So it's worth thinking outside the box. Anything
Yeah.
else that we haven't covered?
I think the only thing that I would want to just add to what Vanessa was talking about and network, excuse me, is that a lot of people might say, but I'm an introvert and I don't like connecting with people. This is like gives me so much anxiety to have to reach out to people. What can I do? The great thing is that we live in such a virtual world now, and your networking might look different than what mine is. And I feel like for me, I'm very much a words person and a people person, and reaching out and sending an email isn't, it feels like second nature to me, especially because of what I do and how many people I speak to in a day. But for people who are feeling like that gives them a lot of anxiety and they don't know how to overcome that, I was talking to my friend who has a sister who had a situation where they're not people, but they have this great skill set and talent for animation. And they've started a TikTok channel where they have millions of followers now. They don't go out into the world, and it's incredible. But this person is being able to now is getting offered different jobs for um, uh, animation work and freelance gigs and teaching classes, which I don't know if that person would do, but they're getting themselves out there in a different way. So I think comes down to thinking outside the box. How can you connect with people if verbally speaking with somebody and having to engage with somebody is challenging for you? Maybe you have conversation and dialogue on different Reddits and things like that. So
Yeah.
just
I
think
No,
love
outside
that.
the box.
I love that. I started a TikTok channel. No, but I also think that like if you are the sort of person who feels super awkward reaching out to somebody who's maybe 3 network places down your kind of chain and asking them for a favor, because that just feels awkward even for the most bold amongst us. But I think too, like do a little research on that person and find a reason to reach out to them that isn't just asking for help. Like, I read this article that you wrote, or so and so told me you're so great at X, or do a little research on that person, find something that shows that you know about them. We've covered this before. And that yes, you're reaching out because they're a thought leader and because you're seeking their wisdom or you're seeking some insight from them, but you've done your homework and you look to that person as a respected party, a respected authority on something. I think that can make that cold outreach easier. It's not just, hey, I really need a job, I'm calling you to see if you can help me. It's, I know this about you and I respect it and I'd like to talk to you about that thing. I think that's a good way to approach it.
definitely. And I think that also once you have that person's ear, whomever it is, or that group's ear, to not just let that, even after potentially you get where you want to be, wherever that is, don't let that go away. Don't forget that that person and those groups of people were there for you when you needed them. So the last thing you want to do is create this synergy with someone or a group and then just walk away because they've already served their quote unquote purpose for that time being. I mean, that's just, I'm going to put that out there too, because you might not realize you're doing it even because you get wrapped up in the new thing, but just keep keep those people close because they were there for you, and you never know what can come down the line. I mean, it's just the right thing to do.
Mhm.
It does come full circle. And funny story, I recently hired my very first boss out of college. She
That's so
was
exciting.
first person to kind of take a chance on me in starting my journalism career, and she was the she was the leader of our show and our team, and here we are 12 years later, and we reconnected, and she's like, hey, I'm looking for work. And I was like, hey, do you know anybody who does recruiting within the news world? And she's like, pick me. And she's recently started on my team at the company that I work for, and she's hitting it out of the park. And the question is, well, she doesn't necessarily come directly from this full cycle corporate recruiting background. I was like, no, but she's managed people, and she's been a supervisor. And it's just because on paper she didn't have these specific things. She's been with the company now for a month, and the feedback is just incredible. It's crazy how full circle everything comes, because you just never know when you'll be in a position to be able to help somebody, and vice versa, and maintaining that network and that communication. And even if it's check-ins here and there, just thinking, how are you, how's everything going, just wanted to reach out and say hello. Just to Sue's point, read that article that you wrote, things look like they're going well. I mean, you just never know. And in this lifetime, I never thought she and I would have the opportunity to work together again. And it's yeah, I mean, literally just happened within the last 2 months, and it's something I've been really excited about.
That's so cool. That really is so cool that you're able to give back after all that time. And I think at the end of the day, everybody just wants to be appreciated and heard, right? And if you can make
Mhm.
somebody else feel that, then, only good can come from that.
Absolutely. You quoted Oprah there, Sue.
Yeah, really?
Oprah's the queen, right? But yeah, she
Yeah.
always said that, no matter how many interviews, no matter who it was, the caliber that they were at, the status they had, at the end of the day, it was, the cameras and lights would turn off and like, how was that? They just want to
Mhm.
be heard and seen. And you hit the nail on the head. So, Alisa, as always, this has been awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.